Greetings and salutations, and thank you for clicking on this video. I really appreciate it. I want to do a video about a subject that I have been meaning to get into in depth on for quite some time, and that is giving back to the Linux community. I want to talk a little bit about how you, and I do mean you, can contribute to the Linux community. Most people think that when you say contribute to the Linux community, it means one of two things. You can give money, or you can contribute code. Well, what if you're poor? And what if you are not a programmer? You just might be a user. Does that mean that you can't get involved? No, absolutely not. And I'm going to show you how you can be a part of the community. And I ordinarily do not ask those of you who take time out of your life to view my videos, to share my videos. You don't hear me say that very often. And that's because I figure if you like the video, you're going to share it, and if you don't like the video, you're not going to share it. But this time around, I'm going to ask you to share this video. Please watch the whole video, and if you agree with what I say, please share this video so that we can get the word out. Because there are a lot of new people coming to the Linux community, and maybe they don't quite understand how it all works and how Linux is available for free. It really is free, you know. There's no catch. You can go and download any distribution of Linux that you like, and they're not going to ask you for a dime. They won't ask you for your credit card. They won't ask you for your personal information. That's most Linux distributions. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we roll along here. But it's very cool. This technology is available for free. If you have the hardware to run it and you want to invest the time that it takes to learn how to use it, the sky is the limit. You can do anything you want with this technology. And that is a wonderful thing. And I feel like that open source software and Linux is one of the few things good that's going on in this world right now. And no, I don't view it as a religion. Some people do. And no, I am not a pie-in-the-sky hippie. I'm actually a very conservative person. But this is one of the few good things going on in the world. And if you benefit from it, then I feel like that it is incumbent upon you to contribute back to the free software movement what's going on here, because it is very important. Corporations and governments all over the world want to get at you. They want your money. They want your personal information. They want to control you in some way or another. Linux does not want to control you in any way. It is a technology that is available, and you can use it anytime, any place, for any reason. That's called freedom, ladies and gentlemen. When you look at a Linux desktop, and we're looking at Linux Mint 17.3, you're not looking at something that a corporation put out or a team of highly paid developers that work behind closed doors put together and said, here, this is what we've done, and like it or lump it, now pay for it. No. Linux is a collaborative effort by thousands of people. And every Linux distribution, regardless of what distribution it is, represents the work over the last 25 years of people who have mostly done it without credit and without much reward. They are doing it to contribute to the whole. I think that's really cool. And I decided a long time ago that I was going to try and figure out some way to contribute back to this incredible thing that's going on, which is the free software movement. So now that I'm off my soapbox and got that out of the way, let's actually get into a little bit about what Linux is, what free software is, and how it works. Linux exists because of the GNU General Public License. This is a license that the Free Software Foundation published and made available to anybody who wanted to distribute software freely. The guy who came up with this idea is a fellow named Richard Stallman. Now, Richard Stallman, by every account, is a very weird sandwich, but he came up with a wonderful idea more than 30 years ago. Richard Stallman worked at the computer lab at MIT, and he was working on artificial intelligence research. And it got to a place where he couldn't gain the kind of access that he needed to get his job done to the software he was using. We're talking about a brilliant developer here. And they were using licensed software in the lab. And they told him, no, you can't look at the source code. You can't change this. You can't modify to make it what you need it to be. And you can't distribute it to anybody else because it was under license. He thought this was immoral. And if you go back and look at a movie called Revolution OS, which is available here on YouTube, he'll explain it in great detail. He said he felt like that this was not being a good person. Being a good person means that you should be able to share. So that is why he started the free software movement. And the free software movement immediately started work on GNU, G-N-U, which is an acronym for GNU's Not Unix. So it's a recursive acronym. And they needed a way to do this legally, and they came up with the GNU General Public License. When Linus Torvalds created the Linux kernel in 1991, he published it under the GNU General Public License. And it was designed to work with the parts of the GNU operating system that were already in place and being used by people all around the world. So, with the Linux kernel and the rest of the GNU system, we had a new operating system that was totally free and anybody could download, use, change, and do whatever they want to with it. This is why Richard Stallman, at every opportunity, makes a big deal to say that really we ought to be calling this GNU Linux because it is a combination of the two technologies. I think he's fighting a losing battle simply because of the fact that Linux is known as Linux, and while I pay my respects to GNU and the parts of the system that came from the GNU project, I really don't think that people are going to stop calling it Linux and add GNU into the name. However, if you look at the legal documentation for any Linux distro, it says GNU Linux. So yes, officially they do get the credit that they deserve. Another thing that Richard Stallman is fond of saying is that this software is free as in freedom. It's not necessarily free as in free beer. And it is not a requirement that the software be freely available to everyone to download in a packaged form that anybody can use. The software, the source code for the software must be available for public review. That's part of the GNU General Public License. But that doesn't mean that a person cannot sell it. And it doesn't mean that a person cannot take a piece of open source software and modify it to do what they want it to do and then charge people for it. They have to follow certain rules. They have to give credit to the original developers, and they have to change the name of that piece of software. So the license makes it possible for people to make money off of this software. From an ethical and moral point of view, many or most distributions of Linux decide to give it away for free. And that is perfectly all right. Red Hat sells their distribution of Linux, but they don't necessarily sell the software itself. They sell a support package around it. So if you buy Red Hat Linux and you're licensed to use it, that means that you are entitled to world-class support for that operating system. And this is very attractive to large corporations who have millions and millions of dollars invested in the data that their computers work with every day. They want to have somebody to pick up the phone and call, and they can come and fix their system. So getting a Red Hat license is something that is not a big deal for them at all. But for the average user, we can just go and download it, and then we can get our support from forums, from distribution documentation. We can get our support from people in the community who offer IT support services for a fee. It's available. Whereas if you run Mac or Microsoft and you call them, they have pretty much lousy support because there is no incentive for Microsoft to support you. There's none whatsoever. They make their money off of the license fee that you pay when you buy Windows or buy a machine that has Windows pre-installed, because you do pay Microsoft for that license fee. And so, therefore, this is where the focus of their business is. Whereas somebody who is selling support for Linux, that is their product, is the support. And a customer can either go find his own support elsewhere, or he can figure it out for himself and not pay the money at all. Whereas Microsoft pretty much makes it where it's like it or lump it. So that's something else to keep in mind when you're thinking about free software. And in the Linux world, there is a lot of great support out there that's absolutely free. You just got to take the time to look for it in the forums. So this movement has been going on for 30 years. And it has steadily grown to the point where open source is a force to be reckoned with. And the companies that produce and sell proprietary software, they're scrambling to figure out how to compete with something that is freely available. And that is true more in enterprise and data centers than it is on the home desktop. But if the number of people that have responded to what I do here on YouTube is any indication, there is definitely interest around the world in open source technology, and it is gaining momentum more and more every day. So a lot of new users who come to Linux may not understand how all of that works, and they may be suspicious, or they may think that there's nothing is free and there's always a catch. Or they may think that because it's free that it is inferior in some way to something that you pay for. And of course, those of us who are people who have been using Linux technology for a long time will tell you, in many ways, it is much better than anything you would pay for. So let's talk about how, if you benefit from Linux technology, you can start giving back to the community and become a part of the free software movement. Well, the first thing, of course, is pretty obvious, and that's give money to the projects that mean the most to you. It takes money and it takes time to run a Linux project, especially on a distribution level, something like Linux Mint or Ubuntu Mate or Fedora or any of these other projects. Whether they're affiliated with a corporation that makes money or not, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are being funded by that corporation to the extent that they need to be funded. So it is a really good idea to give these projects a little bit of your cash. And one of the things about that is that if you donate to a project that is free, you're going to help to keep it free. Because a project, if they get to a place where they can no longer keep going, they have the option of either shutting down, or they can start charging for what they're putting out there. And then there is no rule against that whatsoever. And there have been many open source projects over the years that have gone to a paid software type of situation. And, if you want to keep it free, then you can help them to keep it free. Also, you vote with your money. And so if there's a project that you really like and they're doing what you think needs to be done, and you're getting a benefit from them, when you give them your donation, you are helping to make sure that they are going to keep going. Whereas projects that aren't necessarily the world's greatest or whatever, they're going to get less funding. And it's like survival of the fittest. We really want the best technology to be part of the Linux community. And so if you support people that are doing really good work and they're helping the community and contributing back, it helps them to keep going. Whereas the projects that might not necessarily be doing the best for everybody, if they don't get the funding, then they'll get the message, hopefully. And the folks who are devoting their time to that project will go to a project that is doing something. Of course, that's all a matter of opinion, but whatever your opinion is, you can vote with your money. And we're not talking about vast sums of money here at all, ladies and gentlemen. No. Yes, you could download Linux Mint and put it on your machine, or Ubuntu Mate, or Ubuntu, or Fedora, or Arch, or Manjaro, or OpenSUSE, whatever. You could put that on your machine and say, okay, well, this is going to do exactly what I need it to do. And if I had gone out and bought Microsoft Windows, I would have paid $129 for this. You could give them $129 all in one shot and say, okay, this is going to do it for me. But you don't have to. What you can do is just give up a cup of coffee every month. If you go to Starbucks, a cup of coffee is going to cost you $5. And if you take that $5 and instead of spending it on Starbucks and make coffee at home, one day, that's all it takes, one day, and you give that to an open source project that is benefiting you, that goes a long, long way. Because if everybody gave $1 or $2 or to a project every month that they used, like let's say Ubuntu Mate, for instance, if every person who downloaded Ubuntu Mate gave them $1, it would fully fund the project for like a year. Because there is a vast number of people that use these projects, but sadly, only a few of those people take the time to monetarily contribute. So that's something to definitely talk about. And we're going to look at some pages here in a few moments. I'm going to show you how easy it is to actually do that. The next thing that you can do is to take a class and be somebody. Get involved with the community. Learn as much as you can. If you want to go beyond being a casual user, then the one thing that you are going to have to offer to the community is knowledge. So yes, when you first start out with Linux, there's absolutely nothing wrong with gaining your knowledge from the forums, reaching out to people to help you get started. But once you get rolling and you start learning more and more about it, then I think it becomes incumbent on you to go out and find the knowledge that you need. And so you can go out and take a class. I've talked in the past about the Introduction to Linux, which is the Linux Foundations course, which is available through edX. And you can take the class and get a certificate at the end of the class, or you can audit the class for free. But do that. Challenge yourself. Learn something about the system. And you can pick and choose whatever part of the Linux ecosystem is most near and dear to you. If you want to learn about network servers, for instance, then you can take classes to learn how to do that. But the Introduction to Linux is a great way to start. And then you can join the forums. Join the forums at first to learn from other people, and then as you learn, you can share knowledge. Send bug reports. This one is really important. And this was brought home to me not too long ago by listening to Martin Wimpress, who's the head developer, however you want to say that, of Ubuntu Mate. And he was talking about the Ubuntu Network Manager bug that is plaguing Ubuntu 16.04 right now. This is the bug that has caused me to put Linux Mint on 2 of my machines, even though I had been running Ubuntu Mate all over the place. And he pointed out that when he actually went to look at the bug report for this, although he anecdotally knew about it because of all of the noise in the community, it was only like 5 or 10 people that had actually filed an actual bug report. Don't assume that the developers are reading the forum that you're reading and watching the video that you're watching or listening to the podcast, because how they're going to know that there's a problem here is if you file a bug report. And so that's something that you need to do. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a few moments. And just generally share your knowledge. Once you start getting to a place where you're very comfortable with what you're doing, maybe you find a workaround for a problem somebody's talking about in a forum, don't be afraid to offer a suggestion as long as you know it's going to work. Don't be afraid to jump in the conversation and say, have you tried this or have you tried that? Now, the Linux community is like any community in the world. And not every member of that community is positive. Not every member of that community is somebody who is appreciative of what you're trying to contribute. And you have to understand that when you walk in the door. There are bad apples everywhere that you go, and that happens in the Linux community as well. But don't let these people keep you from contributing to the community. Figure out ways to do that. And I'll talk a little bit about that more in depth in a little while here. So I wanted to look at some of the pages for some of the projects that are near and dear to my heart to show you guys how easy it is to get involved here. So if we come to the Ubuntu Mate page and we click on the community, here we have links to all of the social networks and the forums. And then, of course, here on the Ubuntu Mate page, we can also come over here and look at how to donate, which is really quite easy to do. You can do it anonymously through PayPal. You can do it on a subscription basis if Ubuntu Mate is that important to you, or make a one-time donation here. And it's really quite easy to do. So if Ubuntu Mate is something that you use and you like, support the Ubuntu Mate project. And they have all kinds of ways to do that monetarily here. So let's switch to another project here. Let's look at Linux Mint, and we are on their page here that talks about the community and talks about getting involved, and they give you some of the same links, how you can contribute. And they also say that you can send bug reports here, and so they have a link to where you can do that. You can sign up for the forums. You can get involved with the project, and here is where it happens, right here on the project's page. Now, when we talk about Ubuntu, Ubuntu has an account with Launchpad, and they host several projects. So if you're going to report a bug that affects all Ubuntu, and that would be all of the Ubuntu spins and any project that was based on Ubuntu, like Linux Mint, then you create yourself a Launchpad account. And then you can come in here and you can look at bug reports. So if you're having a problem that's consistently happening with your machine, you can search for a bug report, or you could file a bug report from scratch. And they have all kinds of great directions here on how to do that. And the main thing to remember with a bug report is that you want to give the developers as much information as possible. And they may come back to you and ask for more. So when you make a bug report, you're probably going to have to invest a little bit of time in it. But if you find that a bug report is already made, one of the ways that you can contribute to that bug report is just to simply click the little thing that says, "This bug affects me." Subscribe to the bug. That is really important because the developers will get an idea of how big a bug this is and how widespread it is by the number of people who actually subscribe to the bug. And once you have subscribed to a bug, you're going to get updates. They're going to tell you what's going on with this bug and when it will be fixed. So I have subscribed to the Network Manager bug here. And so therefore, when they have progress or things happen here, they are going to send me a report to let me know. And that way I can tell you guys once I find out about the progress on the Network Manager. So yeah, that's how you would do that. You go to the sites and just look around and read. Take a little time, and you can figure out how to contribute to the project. All right, volunteer your services to these projects because, and everybody thinks when you say contribute to Linux, they think that you have to be a code developer. You have to be able to hack code and look at source code and change things and fix bugs and all that stuff. Well, not all of us can do that, but you may have great writing skills. And if you have great writing skills, one of the things that you can do is to write documentation for the project, help to edit documentation, because that's something that projects have a hard time with, is documenting everything that they do. So if you go to a project that has really good documentation, let's say like Manjaro, Linux Mint has pretty good documentation, although there are holes in Linux Mint's documentation sometimes. I have to say that. It's overall pretty good for the average user. And it's because people took the time to write that documentation and work with people to put that in a way that the average user can understand. And if that's something you're good at, then there you go. You can contribute your artistic skills to a Linux project. Maybe you like to design icons. Maybe you would like to, desktop theming is something that you're really into. Well, you can contribute a theme. You can make suggestions on a theme. You can join the team that works on the art for whatever distribution it is, and you can become a part of that and make your contribution that way. You can also moderate a forum. That's something that is quite useful. To go in there and be somebody who kind of makes sure that the stuff in the forum follows the rules of the forum, and they don't have people in there who are posting things they ought not to and that sort of thing. That's something that you can do to contribute to your time, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a project forum. It could be any forum that's near and dear to your heart. You could become part of that. And this is one that I really want to talk about here. We're talking about spreading the word. And this is important to me because this is the outreach that I have chosen as my main approach. When I started posting YouTube videos about Linux, I had two goals. Number one was just to kind of show people what I was learning as I rolled along and let them know that yes, there is an alternative to the Microsoft merry-go-round or, Steve Jobs' little invention there. You can do something else. And so I started making those videos. The other reason I did that was to promote my own IT services. So at the end of every video, you hear me say, check out Easy Linux on the web, check out Easy Linux on Facebook. And that's because Easy Linux is my personal outreach where I give support to people who are getting started with Linux. The idea is to make sure that they have a nice, healthy install so that they've got the best shot of getting the most out of the system. And I do charge a fee for that. So this is, using the GNU public license as an example, this is a way that you can help yourself while you're, working with Linux. However, not every person who posts YouTube videos about Linux does the community any big favors. And I am going to take a minute to talk about this because it's something important, and it's actually come up in the comments, and I want to make a comment right here. There have been many people that I have watched on YouTube, their Linux videos, that have vastly disappointed me because of things that they do that do not contribute or help the community. One YouTuber in particular, who I was really enjoying their videos, decided that they would post a video that was basically an ill-informed pack of lies. And I think part of the motivation that made that video that way was, first of all, this person's ignorance. And second of all, I think that this person was doing that to generate clickbait. It was the whole reason he did it. And when the video was posted, several people in the community pointed out some of the things in the video that were blatantly wrong and said, no, it really doesn't work this way. And this person's response to that, and believe me, those comments were nice and respectful because I remember reading the thread. The person's response to that was to turn the comments off for the video. And the video is up to this day, and you can go click on it and watch it. And unfortunately, first of all, it casts Linux in a bad light. And second of all, the things that this person says are not necessarily true. The truth is twisted and distorted in that video, and somebody who didn't know a great deal about the system could really walk away with a negative impression about Linux. There are people on YouTube who start out great and then they run into a few trolls in the community, or they get a little bit of negative feedback and then they explode and they post a rant video and talk about how awful the Linux community is and how awful it is as a system. That does the Linux community no good whatsoever, and it completely ruins your credibility. So it's kind of hard to loop back after you've posted a video like that and continue to post videos about Linux, because as far as I'm concerned, you've lost a lot of your credibility because you have done that. Now, I will admit that 5 years ago, when Linux really did have major issues, I posted a couple of rant videos myself, but no longer. My thing now is just to simply say, if you can't say nothing nice, then don't say nothing at all. And I just let it go. And if a troll comes into one of my forums or makes a comment, he gets deleted. I'm not going to deal with him. I'm not going to get into a flame war. We just ignore them. I am combating the negative with positive. I want to get that message out in a positive way. So yes, there are many things on YouTube that people have said that I could take issue with, and then this channel could become nothing more than a flame war back and forth of me saying, well, such and such said this and he's wrong and whatever the deal. And I'm not going to do that. I think this is a positive thing, and I want people who are coming to the community from the outside to see the best of the Linux community and not the worst of the Linux community, which is the trolling and the infighting and the name-calling and the out-and-out lies that people tell to further their own standing in the community. They think that they can just talk about controversial things and, stuff that's not necessarily true. And if they, shout loud enough that people will think they're cool. I mean, that's not what this is about, gang. So anyway, you can write a blog about Linux, keeping all of that in mind as well. Try and keep things positive. Now, that does not mean that you are dishonest. If you try something and it doesn't work for you, then don't just say, well, it didn't work for me, but it's okay. Say, no, this didn't work for me, and here's why, and this is what it did. Recently, I posted an article in Freedom Penguin about Manjaro, called Manjaro Left Me Cold. And it basically talked about my experiences with Manjaro and the fact that it just would not work for me. And so, yeah, you can say when things don't work for you. That doesn't mean that I don't have a great deal of respect for the Manjaro project. And that doesn't mean that I was attacking them personally. And there are lots of people who use Manjaro every day, and they don't run into the problems that I ran into. What I was doing was just telling what my experience was. So, I wasn't attacking anybody with that. And that's perfectly all right, because we need to be honest about the things that are problems in the Linux system so that we can make people aware of them so they can be worked on and fixed. So I'm not saying be a Pollyanna. I just wanted to point that out. And, even if you're not one of those people who wants to write a blog, you don't want to create YouTube videos, that's not your thing, tell your friends. If it's working for you, tell people about it. Show them. Bring them over to your house and say, hey, man, you got to check this out. This is my new computer. Bam. You'd be surprised how powerful that is, word of mouth, to get the word out about Linux. A lot of people that have just seen my videos and seen my computers personally have asked me about it. And I've done some installs from people who just said, hey, that looks neat. How does that work? And so the more people that use Linux, the better. Because the bigger the community, the more clout it has with hardware and software developers outside of the community, the more attention Linux gets. Okay? So finally, the last thing that I wanted to point out here was the fact that you can help yourself while you help Linux at the same time. So let's say that you are a part of the forums. You've learned a lot. You've taken some classes. Maybe you went out and got a certificate. Well, now you can become not only a contributing part of the community, but you can benefit from this technology in a very tangible and real way. You can offer Linux-based IT training and support. There is a huge need out there for people who will offer IT at reasonable prices for Linux. Most average people tell me who are just starting out that I went down to the computer store and I said something about Linux to him, and the guy looked at me like I was crazy. That's because they're ignorant and they just don't know anything about it. So there is definitely a need out there for people who can go in and do this training and support, and you can build and sell Linux systems. So if you're somebody who likes to tinker with computers, and you can take old laptops and desktops and breathe new life into them and load them with Linux, then you can sell those systems and you can make money off of them. And it would be totally legal because you are not passing on a Microsoft product. You don't have to deal with any licensing. You just put an OEM version of Linux on one of these systems, and when the person boots it up, they just sign in and then they have a computer. And that's one thing that you can do. And a big thing that really needs to happen right now, going back to the top line in that, is that IT and support, is that there are lots of small businesses out there who are desperately want to get away from using Microsoft products and being locked into their licenses, especially since Microsoft lately has been pushing Windows 10 updates down people's throats, and they don't necessarily have the hardware to do that. There's a lot of reasons for that going on. There's a lot of people who are searching for alternatives. So if you are smarter than the average bear, and you know a little bit about Linux, and you know a little bit about servers, and you know a little bit about what offices need, then yeah, there's a huge market for this right now. I mean, it's unbelievable, because a lot of people out there are looking at open source as a more economical and reliable alternative to using proprietary products. So that is something that you can definitely get into. If you are a nerd and you want to help people, then that's definitely one way to do it right there. And As a matter of fact, this is something that I'm waiting on somebody to call me to consult them about setting up a small Linux network in their office right now. I ordinarily do not do businesses. I do individuals through EasyLinux, but in this case, I'm going to see if I can give this guy some pointers and help him get started here, at least point him in the right direction. I am no expert on that at all. The last time that I maintained networks was back when we were running Windows XP and Windows 2000. So I'm not really all hip on networks at this point. And that's pretty much by choice, because I really get a charge out of desktop Linux, and I get a charge out of helping people who aren't necessarily the world's biggest, most savvy computer users to get started with this technology, because Linux has definitely come to a place where I think anybody can use it, and I think about 90% of the computer users out there who do things like surf the web and email and things like that would be able to use Linux with no issue whatsoever. And that's kind of borne itself out because most of my EasyLinux clients are very happy. So anyway, gang, that is my video, and that's what I had to say on this subject. I want to return to this subject at some point, talk a little bit more. I want your feedback. I want your ideas. I would like to make this I'd like to do another part 2 to this video at some point and talk about all of the great ideas that you have thrown out there, maybe throw in some success stories, and I'd also like to write a pretty good article for freedompenguin.com about this somewhere down the road. But this is what I had so far, let's put it that way. So ask not what Linux can do for you, ask what you can do for Linux. And what you can do for me is to check out Freedom Penguin for great articles about Linux from contributors like myself. You can also check out EasyLinux on the web, and you can check out EasyLinux on Facebook. And if you do, be sure and give it a like. Thanks for watching, gang. If you agree with me, share this video.